Welcome in, everybody, to our deep dive into film noir.
I always love a good film noir.
Me too. You shared this presentation with us. It's called History of Film, Film
Yeah.
Noir, Shadows of Cinema, 1930, 1950. And I am so ready to really just dive into this world with you.
Yeah.
All those shadows, secrets, tough guys. And you know what I really want to see?
What's that?
I want to see why this genre is still so fascinating to us, even today.
Well, I think you'll be surprised how much those anxieties and shifts from back then and like the 1930s through the 50s,
Yeah.
they still resonate with us today.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Okay, so first off, can we break down what film noir actually is? I hear the term and I instantly think smoky jazz clubs and trench coats.
Right.
But I bet there's more to it than that.
Well, you're not wrong about the atmosphere.
Okay.
The term itself is French for black film or dark film. It's funny, though, it wasn't even considered a genre at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was just a mood that critics noticed in these Hollywood films, from like the late 30s into the 50s. And later on, they kind of put a name to it.
Oh, so what makes it stand out from, say, like a Western or a screwball comedy?
Okay, so think cynicism, fatalism, and moral ambiguity.
Okay.
It's not your classic heroes and villains story.
Right.
It's more about blurred lines,
Yeah.
tough choices, and the feeling that like doom is always lurking around the corner.
It's interesting how that connects with the historical backdrop, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the Great Depression, World War II, the early Cold War. It's
Right.
like the world was holding its breath,
Yeah.
waiting for the next bad thing to happen.
Yeah, the presentation emphasizes exactly that.
Uh-huh.
These events seeped into film noir, giving it that dark, pessimistic tone.
Right.
Think about it. Economic hardship, social upheaval, global conflict, shifting norms. It's no wonder these films are so steeped in uncertainty and anxiety.
And you see that reflected in the characters, too.
Clearly.
Like those war veterans struggling to find their footing back home.
Exactly.
Okay, can we talk about the visuals?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Film noir is just stunning to look at.
It is.
Those dramatic shadows, the rain-slicked streets.
Right.
It's so iconic.
The high contrast lighting is a huge part of that.
Oh, yeah.
Deep shadows, dark highlights,
Uh-huh.
all creating that sense of mystery and unease you mentioned.
Yeah. It's like the lighting itself is a character.
Right.
Adding to the drama.
Right.
Making you question, what's hidden in those shadows. I know there are all sorts of techniques they used back then to create that look.
Yes.
I've heard of Dutch angles, and there's another one that's something about Rembrandt.
Ah, yes. Dutch angles.
Yeah.
Where the camera's tilted.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like the world itself is off kilter.
Oh, okay.
And Rembrandt lighting, a technique actually pioneered by Cecil B. DeMille.
Oh, wow.
Throws light on just one side of the face.
Right.
And it just instantly ramps up the drama.
Yeah.
It's all about playing with darkness and light, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah.
To reflect those blurred lines between good and evil we talked about earlier.
Oh, that makes so much sense. It's not just about pretty pictures.
No,
it's about using those visuals to tell a story.
Yeah.
And the settings themselves,
yeah,
always so urban, gritty, full of secrets.
Whoa.
It's like the city itself is a character too.
Absolutely. Rain-soaked streets, neon signs reflected in puddles, back alleys.
Yeah.
Film noir thrives in the underbelly of society, showing us the darker side of the American dream.
Right.
And it's almost always in black and white, which just adds to the mood.
Right.
Imagine the Maltese Falcon in bright, cheerful colors.
Oh.
It wouldn't have the same impact, would it?
Not at all. So we've got the look down.
Okay.
Now, what about the stories themselves? What are some of the common threads running through these films?
Well, remember that cynicism and moral ambiguity we talk about?
Yeah.
That's where we really dive deep into the heart of film noir.
So we're not talking about clear-cut heroes and villains here.
Definitely not. There's a strong sense of fatalism, this feeling that these characters are trapped by fate, like they're playing a game they can't win.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like a dark cloud hanging over the story, making you wonder if anything good could possibly happen.
And there's that feeling of isolation too, right? Like these characters are lost in a world that's passed them by.
Exactly. Alienation is a major theme.
Right.
These protagonists are often on the fringes of society, struggling to find their place.
Yeah.
And sometimes they even bring about their own downfall.
Oh, wow.
Then you've got corruption, another biggie.
Yeah.
Whether it's individuals or institutions, film noir loves to expose the cracks in the system.
Right.
Showing us that things aren't always what they seem.
Okay, I'm already getting suspicious.
Yeah.
I bet nobody trusts anybody in these films.
You're catching on.
Okay.
That paranoia is key.
Right.
Everybody is a suspect.
Uh-huh.
Everyone has a secret.
Yeah.
And nobody knows who to believe.
Wow.
It's a world where trust is a luxury and betrayal is always lurking around the corner.
It's like a nightmare. But I can see how this genre still resonates with us today.
For sure.
It's tapping into these universal human experiences, even though it came from a very specific time and place.
Right.
It's like it's speaking to something deep within us.
Yeah.
Something that recognizes the darkness both in the world and within ourselves.
Precisely. And those experiences are brought to life through some truly unforgettable characters.
Oh, right.
We've got the anti-hero, the femme fatale, the corrupt authority figure.
Yes.
Each one of them adds another layer to this complex and fascinating tapestry.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about those iconic characters. The femme fatale, she's more than just a pretty face, right?
Oh, she's definitely more than meets the eye.
Okay.
She's seductive, intelligent, and often uses her wit and charm to manipulate the men around her.
Okay.
But it's not just about being a temptress.
Right.
She often has her own agenda, her own reasons for playing the game.
Yeah.
And sometimes she's even the one pulling the strings.
Wow. She sounds like a character you don't want to mess with.
No, you don't.
Okay. And what about those anti-heroes you mentioned?
Yeah.
They're not your typical good guys, are they?
Not exactly.
Okay.
They're often flawed, world-weary, and disillusioned, making questionable choices that blur the lines between right and wrong.
Right.
Think of a detective who's seen too much darkness.
Right.
Or a down-on-his-luck boxer trying to make one last comeback.
Yeah.
They're not perfect.
Yeah.
But their struggles are often what make them so compelling.
It sounds like film noir embraces those shades of gray in human nature.
Absolutely.
It's not afraid to show us the messy, complicated parts of being human.
Yeah.
And what about those authority figures? They're not always on the side of the angels, are they?
Definitely not.
Okay.
The corrupt authority figure is a staple in film noir.
Uh-huh.
The cop on the take, the politician with a hidden agenda, the businessman with a ruthless streak.
Wow.
They represent the rot beneath the surface of society, showing us that power can corrupt even the best of intentions.
So we've got these complex characters, these morally ambiguous situations, and this incredibly stylish visual world.
Right.
Who are some of the masterminds behind these films?
Oh, yeah.
The presentation mentioned a few big names.
It did. And that's where we're heading next.
Okay.
To delve into the brilliant minds who shaped the genre
Yeah.
and created some of the most iconic films of all time.
Sounds like we're about to enter a whole hall of fame. Let's take a look at the directors who really left their mark on film noir.
Let's do it.
So many great directors to talk about. The presentation highlighted Billy Wilder, who gave us Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
Both of which are so quintessentially film noir.
Yeah, Sunset Boulevard especially dives into this fascinating world of faded Hollywood glamour, but with a healthy dose of cynicism, of course.
Of course, it wouldn't be film noir without it.
Exactly.
And then you've got Orson Welles, whose Citizen Kane is considered a masterpiece.
Oh, for sure. Even beyond film noir.
It's true. I mean, the way Welles plays with light and shadow in that film, it's groundbreaking,
Yeah.
He creates this world that's both beautiful and unsettling,
right?
Which really captures the spirit of film noir.
Right. And his later film, The Lady from Shanghai, is another must-see for any fan of the genre.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how a film from 1941 can still feel so modern and influential today.
I know, it's crazy.
The presentation also mentioned Fritz Lang.
Yes.
Who directed even earlier, back in 1931.
Oh, yeah. Lang was a master of suspense and atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see how German Expressionism, with its exaggerated visuals and dark themes, really influenced his work. And by extension, film noir.
Right.
Might not be a traditional film noir film, but it laid the groundwork for many of the visual and thematic elements that would come to define the genre.
It's like a family tree of film styles with these different branches influencing each other.
That's a great way to put it. And what about John Huston? He directed two major films in the presentation, The Maltese Falcon and The Asphalt Jungle.
Yes, The Asphalt Jungle is interesting because it takes those classic noir elements and applies them to a heist film.
Oh, okay.
It shows how versatile the style can be.
Right.
You don't always need trench coats and fedoras to create that feeling of suspense and moral ambiguity.
It's like the genre itself is a character adapting and evolving depending on the story being told.
Like that, yeah.
The last director mentioned was Otto Preminger, who directed Laura and Fallen Angel.
Both from that classic noir period.
Yes.
Yeah, Preminger had this knack for exploring complex characters and relationships, often with a touch of psychological intrigue. His films really dig into the hidden motivations and desires of the characters, which makes them all the more fascinating.
So many incredible directors and films.
I know, right?
Speaking of films, we have to touch on some of those iconic titles that really define the genre. The presentation mentions Double Indemnity as a perfect example of film noir.
Yes.
With a classic femme fatale driving the plot.
Oh, yeah. It's the perfect example of how desire, betrayal, and fate intertwine in film noir. You've got this seemingly ordinary guy who gets caught up in a scheme orchestrated by this, beautiful but dangerous woman.
Right.
And it all spirals out of control from there.
Yeah.
It's a story that keeps you on the edge of your seat, wondering who will come out on top, if anyone.
It sounds like nobody is safe in film noir.
Nobody's safe.
And then there's The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart.
Oh, a classic.
Which is known for its twisting, turning plot that's almost impossible to follow.
Oh, it's so good, though.
Right.
It's the kind of film that rewards multiple viewings.
Oh, yeah.
Each time you watch it, you catch new details, new clues, and new layers of meaning. And Bogart, with his world-weary charm and cynical wit, he is the quintessential film noir anti-hero.
He really embodies that tough guy exterior with a hint of vulnerability underneath. Totally.
Out of the Past was another film from the presentation that stood out to me.
Oh, yeah. Out of the Past is a classic example of how the past can come back to haunt you in film noir. It's a story about a private detective who gets pulled back into a web of deceit and danger by a former lover.
Oh, wow.
Proving that in this genre, you can never truly escape your past.
And of course, we have to mention Citizen Kane again.
Oh, always.
Its influence is undeniable, even if it bends some of the genre's conventions.
It's a film that pushed the boundaries of storytelling and cinematography.
Right.
Its use of flashbacks, its nonlinear narrative, and its innovative camera work.
Yeah.
All contributed to the evolution of film noir.
The presentation also mentioned a film called Night of the Hunter.
Oh, yes.
Which, while considered part of the genre, doesn't follow all the typical tropes.
That's a great point. Night of the Hunter is interesting because it lacks the classic femme fatale character.
Yeah. But it still embraces the dark atmosphere, the moral ambiguity, and the unsettling visual style that are so characteristic of film noir.
So there's room for experimentation and variation within the genre.
Absolutely.
That makes sense because film is an art form. And art is all about pushing boundaries and exploring new possibilities.
Exactly.
Now, something that always fascinates me about film noir is its portrayal of men and women.
Yeah.
The presentation touched on that too.
It did. Film noir challenged the traditional gender roles of the time.
Right.
Particularly with the emergence of the femme fatale.
Yeah.
Here you have these strong, independent women who are often smarter and more cunning than the men around them.
Yeah.
They use their sexuality and their intelligence to get what they want. And they're not afraid to break the rules.
It's definitely a far cry from the damsel in distress or the dutiful housewife.
Oh, yeah.
Often seen in other genres at the time.
Right.
But what about the men in these films? How are they portrayed?
Well, film noir also explores masculinity in crisis, especially in that post-war era.
Right.
Many of the male protagonists are veterans struggling with trauma, disillusionment, and a sense of displacement.
Oh, wow.
They're trying to find their place in a world that's changed.
Right.
And they're often unsure of their role in society.
So it's not just about tough guys and femme fatales. It's about exploring these deeper questions of identity and purpose.
Exactly.
In a world that's been turned upside down.
Right.
And it's all done within this visually striking and emotionally charged world.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about the lighting and the settings, but what about the actual camera techniques they use to create that signature noir look?
Well, low-key lighting is essential.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about creating those dramatic shadows and contrasts, making you feel like you're peering into a hidden world.
Right.
And then there's the use of wide-angle lenses.
Yeah.
Which distort the perspective and create a sense of unease.
That's a great way to put it. The visual style is mirroring the psychological state of the characters. Everything is slightly distorted, slightly off balance.
Yeah.
The presentation also mentioned deep focus.
Yes.
Which is a technique I don't fully understand. Yeah, can you explain what that is and how it works?
Sure. So deep focus is when both the foreground and background are in sharp focus.
Oh, of course.
This allows the director to pack more information into the frame, adding to the sense of depth and detail.
Right.
It also forces you, the viewer, to become more active, deciding where to focus your attention.
That's so clever.
It's a cool technique.
And I'm noticing a pattern here.
Mm-hmm.
All of these techniques are about making the viewer feel a bit uncomfortable, a little on edge.
Right.
Like we're right there in the story, experiencing the same unease as the characters.
Exactly. Film noir doesn't want to lull you into a sense of comfort or complacency.
Right.
It wants to shake you up, make you think, and keep you guessing until the very end.
Yeah.
And it achieves that through a combination of visual techniques, storytelling, and even set design.
Speaking of set design, the presentation used the term expressionistic set design.
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean?
So, expressionistic set design uses the environment to reflect the mood and psychological state of the characters.
Okay.
Think claustrophobic rooms, looming shadows, distorted architecture.
Wow.
That's almost like the setting itself becomes a character.
Yeah.
Adding to the overall feeling of unease and tension.
That's so cool. It's like the world these characters inhabit is a reflection of their inner turmoil.
Right.
And to add to that feeling of disorientation, film noir often uses unusual camera angles.
Right. Those unconventional angles, whether they're tilted, canted, or shot from extreme high or low positions, further unsettle the viewer, conveying a sense of unease or even paranoia.
Right.
It's all about keeping you off balance and questioning what you're seeing.
Yeah. So we've got this incredibly stylish and unsettling visual world.
Yes.
But film noir isn't just about looks.
No, definitely not.
It's got some serious intellectual depth, too. The presentation talked about the literary and philosophical influences that shaped the genre.
Absolutely. Film noir is rooted in hard-boiled detective fiction.
Oh, right.
Think Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler.
Yeah.
With their gritty urban landscapes and their tough-talking detectives who operate on the fringes of the law.
Their work definitely set the stage for those classic film noir characters and settings.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it sounds like film noir goes even deeper than that, drawing inspiration from philosophy as well.
You're right. Film noir also draws heavily from existentialist philosophy.
Oh, wow.
Particularly the works of Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus.
Okay.
We're talking about themes of alienation, meaninglessness, and the individual's struggle against an indifferent universe.
That explains the sense of doom and disillusionment that hangs over so many of these films.
Exactly.
It's like the characters are trapped in a world where there are no easy answers, no clear-cut moral codes.
Right. Existentialism emphasizes that we create our own meaning in a world that often feels absurd and pointless. And that's a feeling that resonates throughout film noir.
It's like the genre itself is an exploration of what it means to be human in a world that doesn't always make sense.
That's a great way to put it.
It's fascinating how these seemingly disparate elements, detective fiction and existentialism, came together to create something so unique and enduring.
Oh, I know. It's amazing.
And we can't forget the influence of pulp fiction.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Those cheap, popular novels of the era that often featured crime and mystery elements.
Right.
They provided the raw material for many film noir plots with their fast-paced narratives, their colorful characters, and their gritty realism.
Yeah, they're a big part of it.
So it's like film noir took the best of these different worlds.
Yeah.
Hard-boiled fiction, existentialism, pulp novels, and blended them into something entirely new.
Exactly.
But it's not just about the story, the characters, and the visuals.
Right.
The sound is a huge part of what makes film noir so immersive.
Absolutely. The soundscape of film noir is just as important as the visuals in creating that overall mood and atmosphere.
Yeah.
The music, the sound effect, the dialogue,
right.
They all work together to draw you into this dark and dangerous world.
I can already hear that smoky saxophone playing in the background.
I know, right?
The presentation mentioned jazz as a major element of film noir.
Oh, you got it. Jazz was the soundtrack of the era,
Yeah.
And it perfectly captured the blend of urban sophistication and underlying despair that permeates film noir.
Yeah.
Those smoky saxophone solos, the melancholic trumpet melodies, the driving rhythms,
right.
They all add to the feeling that something is brewing, something is about to go wrong.
It's like the music itself is telling a story.
It is.
But it's not all about jazz, is it? Sometimes silence can be just as effective in creating suspense.
Absolutely. Film noir often uses silence to heighten tension.
Yeah.
Leaving the audience hanging on the edge of their seats, waiting for something to happen.
Right.
And then there's the use of voiceover narration, often delivered by the protagonist, which adds to the mood and provides insights into their thoughts and feelings.
It's like we're right there in their heads, experiencing their cynicism, their world weariness, and their struggles firsthand.
Exactly. The voiceover adds another layer of depth and complexity to the storytelling.
Right.
Allowing us to delve into the inner world of the characters.
And film noir also makes effective use of diegetic sound.
Oh, yeah.
Meaning sounds that originate from within the world of the film.
Right.
Things like traffic noise, footsteps on wet pavement, the clinking of glasses in a bar. They all add to the realism and help to immerse the audience in the gritty urban environments.
It's like those everyday sounds become heightened.
Yeah.
Almost ominous in the context of film noir.
Right.
They're no longer just background noise.
Right.
They're clues, they're warnings, they're part of the story.
And finally, we can't forget about the use of discordant themes and sound effects.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which mirror the psychological state of the characters and add to the overall sense of unease and tension.
Exactly.
It's all about creating a soundscape that reflects the darkness and ambiguity of the genre.
Yeah.
Both visually and sonically.
It's like a symphony of shadows.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
The history, the visuals, the themes, the characters, the sound.
It's a lot.
But what about the bigger picture?
Yeah.
What's film noir's lasting legacy? How has it influenced film and culture beyond those few decades in the mid-20th century?
That's a great question. Film noir, while born from a specific time and place, has had this ripple effect that continues to be felt today.
Yeah.
It's like a shadow that stretches out from the past.
Wow. Yeah.
Influencing everything from modern cinema to television, fashion, and even video games.
It's amazing how something that was initially overlooked by critics has become so influential.
It really is.
What are some examples of that lasting legacy? I've heard the term neo-noir thrown around.
Yeah, neo-noir is a term used to describe modern films that incorporate elements of classic film noir.
Oh, okay.
Think of movies like Chinatown, Blade Runner, or LA Confidential.
Oh, yeah.
They all draw inspiration from those classic themes, visuals, and characters.
Right.
But they update them for a modern audience.
So it's not just about imitation. It's about taking those core elements and reimagining them for a new generation.
Exactly.
It's like a conversation across time, a dialogue between filmmakers from different eras.
I like that.
And it's not just limited to American cinema.
Oh, no.
Film noir has influenced filmmaking movements around the world.
It has.
The French New Wave, Japanese cinema, Italian neorealism.
Yeah.
They've all been touched by the dark allure of film noir.
For sure.
Wow, it's truly global. And it's not just film either.
No.
Think about all those noir-inspired TV shows and video games.
Yes.
The aesthetic is everywhere, from Veronica Mars Among Us.
It really is.
It's like the genre itself is a chameleon, constantly changing and adapting to new forms of media.
You're right. And that adaptability is part of what makes film noir so enduring.
Yeah.
Its themes of corruption, betrayal, and moral ambiguity. They're timeless.
Right.
And they can be applied to any number of stories and settings.
So it's not just a genre. It's almost like a language that filmmakers can use to explore those darker aspects of human nature.
Exactly.
And the language is still being spoken today in new and exciting ways.
Absolutely.
There's a continued academic interest in film noir.
Oh, yeah.
With scholars constantly studying and analyzing it, exploring its themes, its techniques, and its cultural significance.
It's a rich area of study.
It's like we're still discovering new things about film noir, even all these years later.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing.
There's always another layer to uncover, another interpretation to explore.
Yeah.
Speaking of interpretation, let's talk about the critical reception of film noir. As you mentioned earlier, it wasn't always embraced as the art form it is today.
It's true. Film noir was initially overlooked by critics during its peak.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't until the 1940s that French critics really recognized it as a distinct style and coined the term film noir.
Oh, wow.
They saw something special in these films, something that American critics had missed. They appreciated the dark themes, the stylish visuals, and the complex characters.
It's interesting how sometimes it takes an outside perspective to truly appreciate something.
It's true.
It's like they were seeing film noir with fresh eyes, unburdened by the conventions and expectations of the time.
Exactly.
And even once it was recognized as a distinct style, the critical reception of film noir has been like complex and evolving. There have been feminist critiques of the genre, examining the portrayal of women, particularly the femme fatale.
Right. I mean, the femme fatale is such a powerful and controversial figure.
Oh, for sure.
She challenges traditional notions of femininity, but she can also be seen as a product of male anxieties.
Right.
A dangerous temptress who needs to be controlled.
It's a debate that continues to this day.
It does.
And there have also been psychoanalytic interpretations of film noir, delving into the psychological depths of the characters and themes, exploring the undercurrents of desire, guilt, and repression.
It's like film noir is a mirror reflecting our own deepest fears and desires.
Right.
It's a genre that invites us to look inward.
Yeah.
To confront those shadowy parts of ourselves that we often try to hide.
And even the definition of film noir itself has been a subject of debate.
Oh, yeah.
Some see it as a genre, others as a style, and still others as a movement.
Exactly. There's no easy answer.
Right.
And that ambiguity is part of what makes it so fascinating to study and discuss.
Film noir resists easy categorization.
It does.
It's a constantly evolving form that continues to surprise and challenge us. It really does. It's like a conversation that never ends. A mystery that's always unfolding. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
I know, right?
But I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to discover with film noir.
Oh, yeah.
It's a genre that rewards repeated viewings, close readings, and thoughtful discussion.
So before we wrap things up,
yeah,
let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned and leave our listener with something to ponder.
Okay.
As they continue their own exploration of this fascinating and enigmatic genre.
Sounds good.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've walked through those shadowy streets, seen how those post-war anxieties and that gritty visual style came together.
Right.
And even touched on the music, which just makes it all so unforgettable.
Mm.
It's amazing how film noir, despite coming from a specific time, still speaks to us today.
What I find so captivating is how it delves into these timeless questions.
Yeah.
Good versus evil, the allure of darkness, the complexities of desire.
Right.
It doesn't shy away from the flawed parts of human nature. It embraces them.
And it does it all with such visual flair.
It does.
The play of light and shadow, the way the camera moves.
Yeah.
The realism of those urban settings. It's not just a story, it's an experience.
It's a feast for the senses.
Right.
Even as it explores the darker corners of the human psyche.
But there's more to it than just style.
Oh, yeah.
Film noir reflects those societal anxieties and changing values we talked about.
Right.
The aftermath of war, shifting gender roles, the questioning of traditional morality.
Right.
It's a genre that holds a mirror up to society.
It does.
And those reflections still resonate with us today.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if those shadows from the past are stretching out and touching us in the present.
Yeah, and in a world that feels increasingly uncertain,
right,
and morally ambiguous, film noir feels strangely relevant.
It does.
You're absolutely right. So for you, our listener, what does this all mean?
That's the big question, isn't it? What can we take away from this deep dive into film noir?
I think film noir encourages us to look beyond the surface, to question our assumptions about right and wrong, and to acknowledge the darkness that exists within us all.
Right.
It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's beauty, complexity, and stories worth telling.
And sometimes those stories are about the people who operate in those shades of gray.
Exactly.
Or the ones who defy easy categorization.
Right.
It's a challenge to our perceptions.
Oh, yeah.
Asking us to see the world in a different light, or perhaps to embrace the shadows.
As you continue to explore film noir, consider how those themes we discussed, corruption, alienation, and moral ambiguity, resonate with your own experiences today.
That's a great point.
What shadows do you see lurking in the corners of our modern world?
Yeah.
What stories are waiting to be told?
That's a thought-provoking question to leave you with.
It is.
I hope this deep dive has helped you appreciate the beauty and power of film noir.
Me too.
A genre that continues to fascinate, challenge, and inspire us even decades after its heyday. It's timeless.
It is. Until next time, keep exploring those shadows and keep the conversation going.
Welcome in, everybody, to our deep dive.